A routine traffic stop quickly devolved into a ticking time bomb as the red and blue lights pulsed in the rearview mirror. When the two aggressive city cops approached the vehicle, they assumed they were dealing with a common criminal. They had no idea they were drawing their weapons on a federal agent. Late at night, the air conditioning in the unmarked Dodge Charger was fighting a losing battle against the oppressive, humid July heat rolling off the asphalt of Interstate 95. Deputy U.S. Marshal Marcus Hale rubbed his thumb across the bridge of his nose, feeling the deep grit of exhaustion. He had been awake for what felt like forever, the last stretch of which was spent baking in a strip mall parking lot in the grittier outskirts of Baltimore. He was hunting a ghost. Richard Kellerman, a fugitive wanted for a string of violent armed robberies across multiple state lines, had been notoriously difficult to pin down. But Hale's informant had sworn Kellerman was holed up in a motel off exit 14. The intel was a bust. Now Hale was heading back to the federal building in downtown Baltimore to file his dead-end report and maybe finally get some sleep. Hale wasn't in uniform. Marshals rarely were when doing plainclothes fugitive recovery. He wore a faded gray Henley shirt, dark tactical cargo pants, and a black windbreaker. Beneath the windbreaker, clipped securely to his reinforced leather belt, sat his gold U.S. Marshal star and his standard-issue Glock 19. His government credentials were in his left breast pocket. The stretch of county road leading toward the city limits was desolate. Streetlights flickered inconsistently, casting long, erratic shadows across the wet pavement from a brief earlier thunderstorm. Hale checked his speed. He was doing exactly the posted limit. He was a professional. He didn't invite unnecessary attention, especially when driving a government fleet vehicle that was essentially a rolling shadow. But trouble doesn't always wait for an invitation. A sudden flare of headlights illuminated the Charger's cabin. Hale glanced in his rearview mirror and saw the distinct, aggressive grille of a Ford Police Interceptor right on his bumper. It was close, too close. The cruiser was tailgating him, running his plates. Hale sighed. Here we go, he thought. Government plates, depending on how they are registered in the system, either come back as federal government, do not stop, or they come back as a restricted ghost plate, which can sometimes throw a local dispatch system for a loop if the dispatcher isn't experienced. A moment later, the darkness of the cabin was shattered by a strobe of blinding red and blue LED lights. The short, sharp whoop of a police siren echoed off the concrete barriers. Hale calmly engaged his turn signal, easing his foot off the accelerator. He pulled the Charger onto the wide gravel shoulder, put the vehicle in park, and immediately turned off the engine. He rolled down all four windows, standard law enforcement courtesy to let the approaching officer see into the vehicle, and turned on the dome light. He placed his hands firmly at the 10 and 2 positions on the steering wheel. He knew the drill better than anyone. As a black man in America and as a seasoned law enforcement officer, Hale knew exactly how quickly a dark road and a tense cop could turn a misunderstanding into a tragedy. In the side mirror, Hale watched the driver and passenger doors of the cruiser pop open. Two uniformed officers stepped out. The approaching officers were from the local county precinct. The man taking the lead on the driver's side was Officer Harlan Mercer. Mercer was in his late 30s, built like a fire hydrant with a tight buzz cut and a posture that screamed confrontation. His hand was already resting heavily on the butt of his holstered service weapon. Flanking the passenger side was Officer Jasper Reed, a younger cop who looked barely out of the academy. Reed kept his distance, shining a high-powered maglite directly into the Charger's cabin, effectively blinding Hale. "Keep your hands on the wheel where I can see them," Mercer barked, his voice loud and edged with unnecessary hostility. He hadn't even reached the window yet. "My hands are on the wheel, officer," Hale replied, his voice a slow, steady baritone. He kept his tone completely devoid of emotion. Panic breeds panic. Calm forces the other party to listen. Mercer stepped up to the window, shining his own flashlight directly into Hale's eyes. "License, registration, and proof of insurance, right now." "Officer," Hale began calmly, squinting against the blinding light, "before I move, I need to inform you that I am a sworn federal law enforcement officer. I am a Deputy United States Marshal. I have my badge on my right hip, my duty weapon next to it, and my federal credentials in my left breast pocket. How would you like me to proceed?" For a split second, there was silence. The protocol for this was simple. Mercer should have asked Hale to slowly produce his credentials, verified the badge, ran the federal ID number with his dispatch, and sent Hale on his way. But Mercer didn't do that. "Shut up," Mercer snapped, taking a step back and unholstering his weapon, keeping it pointed in the low, ready position, but angled menacingly toward the door. "I said give me your license. Don't you lie to me." Hale felt a cold spike of adrenaline hit his bloodstream. The script had just gone off the rails. Mercer wasn't listening. He had looked into the car, seen a black man in a blacked-out muscle car, and made a rigid, unbreakable assumption. "Officer Mercer," Hale said, reading the name tag on the man's chest. "Lower your voice and listen to me. I am a Deputy U.S. Marshal. I am working an active fugitive case. Call your supervisor, call your dispatch, tell them you have a federal agent pulled over." I told you to shut your mouth, Mercer yelled, his voice cracking slightly with adrenaline. On the passenger side, Officer Reed drew his weapon as well, pointing it directly through the glass at Hale's chest. Hands out the window, both of them, now! Mercer screamed. Hale knew that arguing with a terrified, aggressive cop holding a loaded gun was a losing battle. Slowly, deliberately, Hale unclasped his hands from the steering wheel and pushed them out the window into the humid night air. My hands are out, Hale said, projecting his voice so the dashcam of the cruiser would pick it up perfectly. I'm not resisting. I am a United States Marshal. You are making a massive mistake. Open the door from the outside, Mercer commanded, his gun now leveled directly at Hale's head. Do it slow. With his left hand, Hale reached down, grabbed the exterior handle, and popped the door open. Step out, face away from me. Hale stepped out onto the gravel. The heat wrapped around him, but he felt ice cold. He turned his back to Mercer, keeping his hands raised high in the air. Do not reach for your weapon, Hale warned, his voice hardening into the authoritative tone he used when taking down cartel hitmen. Do not try to disarm me. Call your supervisor right now. Instead of calling it in, Mercer lunged forward. Mercer slammed into Hale's back, driving the federal agent forward. Hale's chest hit the roof of the Dodge Charger with a heavy metallic thud. The impact knocked the wind out of him, but his training kept his muscles relaxed. If he tensed up, if he pulled away even an inch, Mercer would claim he was resisting arrest. Give me your hands! Mercer roared, grabbing Hale's left wrist and wrenching it behind his back with enough force to strain the rotator cuff. I am yielding, Hale grunted against the metal of the car. I am a federal agent. Check my left pocket. Officer Reed scrambled around the rear of the Charger, his gun still drawn, his eyes wide and panicked. Harlan, watch out! He said he's got a gun! Reed yelled. I got it, Mercer sneered. He patted down Hale's right side and felt the hard polymer grip of the Glock 19. Mercer yanked the weapon from Hale's holster, completely disregarding weapon safety protocols, and tossed it recklessly onto the gravel shoulder. Next, Mercer's hand brushed against the solid metal star clipped to Hale's belt. Mercer ripped it off the leather belt loop and held it up to the cruiser's headlights. U.S. Marshal? Mercer laughed, a harsh, mocking sound, the sound of a man whose ego had completely overridden his logic. You think you're smart, pal? You think a fake badge you bought off Amazon is gonna save you? I'm locking you up for impersonating an officer, carrying a concealed weapon, and whatever else I find in this stolen car. The car is registered to the Department of Justice, Hale said, his face pressed against the roof of his vehicle. My federal ID is in my breast pocket. Pull it out, look at the watermark, look at the chip, then call your watch commander. Mercer forcefully slammed Hale's right hand behind his back and ratcheted a pair of steel handcuffs onto his wrists. He locked them down tight, too tight. The metal instantly bit into Hale's skin, cutting off the circulation. Shut up, Mercer growled, spinning Hale around and shoving him hard against the side of the car. Hale stood there, handcuffed, disarmed, and humiliated on the side of a dark road by a cop who didn't have a fraction of his training or jurisdiction. But Hale's face was a mask of stone. He locked eyes with Mercer. He didn't look angry. He looked absolutely, terrifyingly calm. You've crossed a line, Hale said quietly. There is no walking this back. Mercer reached into Hale's breast pocket and pulled out a sleek black leather wallet. He flipped it open. Inside was Hale's Department of Justice identification card, complete with a holographic seal, a smart chip, and his photograph alongside the seal of the United States Marshal Service. Mercer stared at it. The arrogant sneer on his face faltered for a fraction of a second, but his pride refused to let him back down. He turned to his younger partner. Reed, run this guy's name, Mercer commanded, tossing the wallet to the rookie. Run him through NCIC. I guarantee you he's got warrants, probably stole the ID. Reed caught the wallet, fumbling it nervously. He looked at the ID, then looked at Hale. For the first time, Reed seemed to realize the gravity of the situation. The man standing in front of them wasn't sweating. He wasn't shaking. He was standing with military posture, wearing the cuffs like they were a minor inconvenience rather than a restraint. Harlan, Reed muttered, his voice dropping an octave. It looks real. The hollow is moving. Just run it in the computer, Reed, Mercer barked. Reed rushed back to the cruiser, climbing into the passenger seat to use the mobile data terminal. Mercer stood a few feet from Hale, his hand resting on his own duty weapon, staring Hale down as if trying to intimidate a mountain. You're going away for a long time, Mercer spat. You didn't ask for my assignment, Hale said smoothly. I don't care about your fake assignment. You should, Hale replied, because right now I am the lead investigator on a federal task force tracking Richard Kellerman, a man who shot a state trooper last week. You just pulled over the lead car on a federal dragnet. You've compromised a secure government vehicle. You've disarmed a federal agent, and you've committed felony assault under the color of law. Mercer's jaw tightened. Keep talking. Add terroristic threats to your charges. Inside the cruiser, the blue light of the MDT illuminated Reed's pale face. He typed in Hale's name, birth date, and the federal identification number printed on the card. He hit enter. The system processed almost instantly. When the screen flashed back, it didn't just show a standard driver's profile. The entire screen flashed a bright, unmistakable yellow banner, a restricted federal database notification. Warning. Credentials verified. United States Department of Justice, Deputy Marshal Marcus Hale, clearance level TS/SCI, do not detain. Beneath the warning was a direct phone number to the regional director of the U.S. Marshal Service in Washington, D.C., along with a localized dispatch number for the Baltimore field office. Reed felt the blood drain from his face. His stomach dropped into his boots. He looked up through the windshield at his partner, who was still aggressively posturing in front of the handcuffed federal agent. Reed grabbed the radio microphone, his hand trembling. Dispatch, this is Unit 412. We need a supervisor at our location immediately. Code 3. Unit 412, copy. Supervisor is en route. What is the nature of the emergency? The dispatcher crackled back. Just get the sergeant here, Reed yelled into the mic. He threw the door open and sprinted back toward Mercer and Hale. Harlan, stop! Reed yelled, waving his hands. He looked terrified. Take the cuffs off him. Take them off right now. Mercer frowned, turning toward his partner. What are you talking about? What did the computer say? It's real, Harlan, Reed said, his voice cracking loudly in the quiet night air. The badge is real. The ID is real. The system locked me out with a federal warning. He's a U.S. Marshal. Mercer froze. The aggressive, chest-puffed demeanor shattered, replaced instantly by the cold, creeping dread of a man who suddenly realizes he has stepped off a cliff. He looked from Reed to Hale. Hale stood exactly where they had left him, his hands cuffed tightly behind his back. He didn't smile, he didn't gloat, he just stared at Mercer with eyes like chips of flint. Officer Mercer, Hale said, the silence of the night wrapping around his deep, uncompromising voice, I believe you have my gun. The heavy, suffocating silence of the roadside was broken only by the rhythmic hum of the Ford Interceptor's engine and the relentless strobing of its red and blue lights. Officer Harlan Mercer stared at Deputy Marshal Marcus Hale, his breathing shallow and rapid. Panic, hot and sharp, was beginning to claw its way up Mercer's throat, but his stubborn pride was a concrete wall refusing to yield. He hacked it, Mercer muttered, his voice trembling as he pointed a shaking finger at Hale. He's a hacker. People buy ghost plates on the dark web all the time. He faked the dispatch ping. Officer Jasper Reed stared at his partner in absolute disbelief. Harlan, are you insane? The MDT terminal gave me a direct line to the Department of Justice. The dispatcher verified it on the encrypted federal frequency. He is a United States Marshal. Shut up, Reed, Mercer snarled, pacing violently across the gravel shoulder. His eyes darted around the empty stretch of highway, looking for a way out of the inescapable trap he had built for himself. He looked back at Hale, who was still standing perfectly still, his hands bound tightly behind his back. Hale's expression remained utterly impassive. He was a master of psychological warfare, and right now he was letting Mercer drown in his own catastrophic mistake. I smell marijuana, Mercer said suddenly, loudly, deliberately projecting his voice toward his cruiser's dash cam. I am detecting a strong odor of burnt marijuana emanating from the suspect's vehicle. I have probable cause to search the vehicle and maintain custody of the suspect. Reed's jaw dropped. Harlan, what the hell are you doing? There is no smell. It's a government vehicle. Back me up, Reed, Mercer hissed, stepping close to the younger officer, his eyes wide and unhinged. We say he was swerving, we say we smelled weed, we tear the car apart, and we find something to justify the cuffs. If we don't, I lose my badge, and you go down with me for failing to secure the scene. Before Reed could process the sheer corruption unfolding in front of them, the wail of approaching sirens shattered the night. Two more local precinct cruisers tore around the highway bend, their tires screeching as they locked up their brakes and slid onto the gravel shoulder. Sergeant Victor Langford, a 20-year veteran with a thick silver mustache and a no-nonsense demeanor, stepped out of the lead vehicle. He took one look at the chaotic scene, Mercer sweating bullets, Reed looking pale as a ghost, Hale handcuffed against the Dodge Charger, and a federal-issue Glock 19 lying disrespectfully in the dirt, and marched forward. What in God's name is going on here? Sergeant Langford bellowed. Dispatch said you pinged a federal ghost vehicle. Sergeant, the suspect is resisting, Mercer yelled, immediately trying to control the narrative. He's driving a stolen vehicle with fake federal plates. I smelled narcotics, and when I asked him to step out, he became combative and reached for a concealed firearm. That is a lie, Reed shouted, his voice cracking. He stepped directly between Mercer and the sergeant. Sergeant Langford, everything he just said is a complete lie. The driver was entirely compliant. Harlan pulled his weapon unprovoked, threw his federal badge on the ground, and cuffed him. Langford looked at Reed, then at Mercer, and finally at Hale. He walked cautiously toward the handcuffed man, shining his flashlight on the black leather wallet resting on the trunk of the Dodge. He picked it up, inspected the holographic DOJ seal, and felt the smart chip embedded in the plastic. Sergeant Langford closed his eyes and let out a long, heavy exhale. He knew exactly what he was holding. He knew exactly what Mercer had just done. Officer Mercer, Langford said, his voice dropping to a dangerously quiet register, uncuff him now. Mercer stiffened. Sergeant, I am telling you. I said take the damn cuffs off, Langford roared, his hand instinctively dropping to his own duty belt. Mercer swallowed hard, pulling the small handcuff key from his pocket. He took a hesitant step toward Hale. Stop, Hale commanded, the single word cracked like a whip. Mercer froze. Hale slowly turned his head to look directly at Sergeant Langford. Sergeant, this man assaulted a federal officer, unlawfully disarmed me, and just attempted to manufacture a false felony charge on a recorded police dash cam to cover up a civil rights violation. If he touches me again, I will consider it a continuation of the assault. Sergeant Langford swallowed hard. The absolute chilling authority in Hale's voice left no room for debate. Sergeant Langford, Hale continued smoothly, you will come over here and remove these restraints, then you will walk over to that cruiser, you will secure the dashcam and bodycam memory drives, and you will place them in an evidence bag in my presence. Because if a single frame of video goes missing, I will have the FBI dismantle your entire precinct brick by brick. Langford nodded slowly. He stepped around Mercer, gently took the keys from the trembling officer's hand, and walked behind Hale. With a sharp click, the restraints fell away. Hale brought his arms forward, rubbing the deep, angry red welts cut into his wrists. He didn't stretch, he didn't yell. He calmly walked over to the gravel shoulder, knelt down, and picked up his discarded Glock 19. He blew the dust off the polymer grip, checked the chamber, and slid it back into his holster. He then picked up his gold U.S. Marshal star from the dirt, wiping it clean with his thumb, and clipped it back onto his belt. Now, Hale said, turning to face the three local cops, call the watch commander and tell him to bring the chief of police. We are going to have a very long night. In short order, the desolate stretch of Interstate 95 had been transformed into a blindingly bright command center. Several more local police cruisers had arrived, establishing a hard perimeter, but they were entirely dwarfed by the fleet of black, heavily armored Chevrolet Suburbans that had roared onto the scene, their hidden red and blue grille lights flashing aggressively. The cavalry had arrived, and they were not happy. Chief Deputy Marshal Everett Kane, a massive, broad-shouldered man with a scowl that could melt steel, slammed the door of his Suburban. He was flanked by three heavily armed deputy marshals wearing tactical vests emblazoned with U.S. Marshal across the chest. Kane bypassed the local police entirely, marching straight to where Hale was leaning against his Dodge Charger drinking from a bottle of water a paramedic had just given him. You good, Marcus? Kane asked, his eyes scanning the red bruising on Hale's wrists. I'm fine, Everett, Hale replied, his voice calm. Just a delay, but the local boys gave me quite the welcome. Kane turned around, his eyes locking onto Harlan Mercer. Mercer was currently standing near the bumper of his cruiser, completely stripped of his duty weapon and badge, surrounded by Sergeant Langford and a very pale, very nervous local police captain who had been dragged out of bed. Kane walked over to the local brass like a storm making landfall. Captain, Kane barked, not bothering with pleasantries. I want a clear, concise explanation as to why my lead task force commander, who is actively hunting a fugitive wanted for attempting to murder a state trooper, was pulled out of his government vehicle at gunpoint and handcuffed like a dog on the side of the highway. The local captain stammered, wiping sweat from his forehead. Chief Deputy Kane, I assure you this was a massive breach of protocol. Officer Mercer acted entirely outside of departmental policy. He misidentified the vehicle and he made an unforgivable error in judgment. An error in judgment? Kane repeated, his voice dangerously low. He pointed a thick, calloused finger directly at Mercer. An error in judgment is writing a ticket for a broken taillight when it's just a loose bulb, pulling a gun on a sworn federal agent, disarming him, and attempting to fabricate a narcotics charge on camera. That's not an error. That is Title 18, United States Code Section 242, deprivation of rights under color of law. That's a federal felony. Mercer couldn't look Kane in the eye. He stared at his boots, his hands trembling violently. His career wasn't just over. His life as a free man was hanging by a thread. The arrogant, untouchable demeanor he had displayed just moments earlier was completely obliterated. Chief Kane, the captain pleaded weakly, we are initiating an immediate internal affairs investigation. He will be suspended without pay pending termination. We will handle him. No, you won't, Hale's voice cut through the humid night air. Hale walked over, joining his supervisor. He looked at Mercer, then at the captain. Internal Affairs isn't going to handle this, Captain, Hale said smoothly, because Officer Mercer didn't just assault a civilian, he assaulted a federal officer performing his official duties. That triggers Title 18, Section 111. I have already contacted the United States Attorney's Office in Baltimore. They have approved an immediate warrant for his arrest. Mercer's head snapped up, his eyes wide with absolute terror. What? No, you can't do this. I'm a cop. I made a mistake. You made a choice, Hale corrected him coldly. You saw a black man in a car, and you made a choice. You saw my badge, and you made a choice. You threw my weapon in the dirt, and you made a choice. Now you get to experience the consequences. Kane nodded to two of the tactical deputy marshals standing nearby. Secure him. The local cop stood in stunned, absolute silence as two federal agents stepped forward, grabbed Harlan Mercer, and spun him around. The harsh metallic ratcheting of federal steel handcuffs echoed loudly into the night, the exact same sound Mercer had subjected Hale to just moments earlier. Harlan Mercer, you are under arrest for the assault of a federal officer and deprivation of civil rights, one of the marshals recited clearly, patting him down with professional, rigid precision. You have the right to remain silent. Officer Reed stood off to the side, watching his former partner being loaded into the back of a blacked-out federal SUV. Reed caught Hale's eye. The rookie officer gave a small, respectful nod, fully understanding that he had narrowly avoided throwing his own life away. Hale returned the nod, a silent acknowledgement that Reed's decision to tell the truth had saved him. As the local police began to awkwardly pack up their perimeter, heavily demoralized and humiliated, Chief Deputy Kane turned back to Hale. You sure you don't want to go to the hospital to get those wrists checked out, Marcus? Kane asked, tossing Hale the keys to a fresh government vehicle. Hale caught the keys with a faint, grim smile. The exhaustion had evaporated, replaced by the relentless drive of a man who still had a job to do. I'm good, Everett, Hale said, opening the door to the Suburban. Kellerman is still out there, and I've got a ghost to catch. Hale climbed into the driver's seat, started the engine, and pulled out onto the dark highway, leaving the flashing lights of the disgraced local cops far behind him in the rearview mirror. Justice hadn't just been served, it had been delivered with the crushing weight of the federal government. If you were on the edge of your seat watching this arrogant cop get the ultimate reality check, hit that like button and share this video. The truth always comes out, and justice was served cold today. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel and ring the notification bell so you never miss another crazy, real-life law enforcement story. What would you have done in the Marshal's shoes? Let us know in the comments below. Stay safe out there.